There were allegations at one time, but now an admission. Now, viewers, let me begin by putting this in perspective. Mistakes can happen in newsrooms. Meeting deadlines can at times add pressure, leaving less time to due diligence. Truth be told, Times Now has made its fair share of inadvertent errors, viewers. A number of you have been quick to fact-check Times Now, have rightly been critical and sought apologies from Times Now. Some of you even decided to sue Times Now. Thank goodness those cases haven't fructified, because some of those cases were based on agendas and falsehoods. But certainly, we have made mistakes. We apologize for them. Times Now has been quick to admit these mistakes. But very few viewers, very few newsrooms can claim the odious distinction of faking the news with deliberation to spin a tendentious narrative to damage personal reputations and undermine the nation's image. It takes a very different kind of animal to behave in that way. Still fewer, I'm talking about newsrooms, can claim to have then dismissed reservations expressed by fact-checkers to haughtily award themselves a clean chit. Now, viewers, by its own admission, The Wire magazine is guilty of first spinning a story on fake facts and then arrogantly defending their journalism. But finally, under tremendous pressure of undeniable mounting evidence of fraud, perhaps even premeditated fraud, this morning, the digital portal The Wire has apologized for a series of stories it ran on Meta, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram. Now, viewers, we are not here holding a brief for Facebook, Instagram, Meta, etc. We have long believed that some of these agencies have become troughs of absolute and unfortunately unverified fakery. But viewers, we have never stood in judgment of Facebook, Instagram, Meta by doing stories against them, proclaiming that we had facts to suggest that they were suborned by spokespersons of parties or by governments. The Wire had alleged that an Instagram post was taken down within minutes after being flagged by Amit Malviya, the head of the BJP's IT cell, because Meta and Amit Malviya had some arrangement with each other where he had this supreme power. The claim was refuted hotly by Meta, and when challenged for proof, The Wire put out a series of exposés that set in motion a cycle that completely demolished a story that The Wire had defended as the absolute truth. So now let's give you a brief of what was claimed and what has now emerged. Claim number one, that Wire has leaked internal report of Instagram that shows how BJP IT head Amit Malviya got a satirical Insta post taken down. But what is the reality, viewers? The reality is that internal report was fake. Wire has been able to provide no proof of this so-called internal report of Instagram being authentic. Claim number two. Wire said they have a subsequent email from Meta's Andy Stone where he is livid at the leak report and said, how the hell did it leak? The reality is that this email address does not exist. Things now get murkier, viewers. Wire then claimed that they had a video where they authenticated Andy Stone's email, where he is allegedly fuming at the leak. Guess what? This video was proven to be fake as well. Meta said that this video was deliberately set up with Instagram's brand name and insignia in order to deceive people. This is a verbatim quote from Meta's statement. Astoundingly, this video was created on October 13th after Wire's initial reports, which Meta and BJP say simply means that Wire first put out these two fake emails, then created a fake video to defend the contents of these fake emails. Now we come to point number 4. Wire then went on to claim that independent experts had, quote, authenticated, unquote, their fake video. Guess what? At least 2 experts went on record to say they did no such thing. Viewers, no such thing, said. That's right, viewers. This is extremely damaging. The fact that this expert says, and I want to go across to Siddharth Talia, who has this statement from the experts. Now, Siddharth, what is the expert saying? This expert was, of course, used as an alibi by Wire to so-called corroborate some of its evidence against Meta, isn't it?
Absolutely, Rahul. So this expert, Ujjwal Kumar, was somebody cited by the Wire as somebody who validated the authentication process to trace the origin of the original email sent by Andy Stone of Meta. Now, Wire was seeking to authenticate those emails, and they undertook a procedure in which they could actually authenticate it, and they claimed that this entire process was validated by this independent expert called Ujjwal Kumar, who happens to be a lead architect at Microsoft. And Ujjwal Kumar actually issued a statement completely refuting the claims made by the Wire, saying that he was not even consulted for this entire process. And let me just read out the operative portion where he says, despite my denial, the Wire modified its report. So this is his allegation. Despite my denial, the Wire modified its report to falsely claim that while I had issued an email confirming validation of the Wire's processes, I did not wish for the article to continue to carry my name. So he's basically alleging that the Wire came out with a narrative where Mr. Ujjwal Kumar tells the Wire to not carry his name as having been part of the validation process. But here's what he says towards the end, which is the smoking gun and extremely damning, Rahul. He says at no point of time prior to the publication of Wire's report dated 15th of October 2022 did any reporter from the Wire reach out to me for any statement on or verification of the Wire's processes. The email screenshot reproduced in the report was not sent from my email account. He is one of 2 independent experts that the Wire claims to have consulted who've completely denied the claims made in its reportage.
Now, viewers, just think about it. If you bring out a story that seems to suggest that the BJP's IT cell, Siddharth, if I'm not mistaken, has a veto over what goes out on the Meta's platforms and can remove them if they are not to their taste, it suggests, viewers, that democracy in this country is being throttled. Siddharth, am I wrong to make this suggestion? Is being throttled by the party in power, which is in a brute majority?
Well, Rahul, that's of course the allegation that keeps coming, but the very fact that here there are layers upon layers of alleged fabrication that has taken place in order to cover up the original fabrication, which was the first initial set of stories that the Wire put out, it raises serious questions about matters such as editorial integrity, and these are allegations that are often hurled by the ecosystem this publication might very well be a part of against what it calls some of its ideological adversaries, but the shoe's on the other foot now, Rahul, and introspection is clearly due.
Well, it is damaging, the fact that this expert says that despite his denials, the Wire modified its report to falsely claim that while I had issued an email confirming validation of the Wire's process, I didn't wish for the article to carry my name, unquote, which means this, that the expert said, I have not validated the report, but Wire claimed that the expert has validated the report and simply doesn't want his name to appear. This, the BJP now says, is an outright fakery intended to damage the BJP's reputation, Amit Malviya's reputation. So here's the thing. Everyone makes mistakes, viewers. I started by saying, in the interests of absolute fair disclosure, that even Times Now has made mistakes. And it's great to own up. But is this a mistake or an outright fabrication of rare malevolence? That's the fundamental question. What was the intent behind this now retracted news report? Was it to create a narrative? These are fundamental questions. Can the organization simply say that they were deceived by their reporter when, viewers, on numerous occasions, Mr. Varadarajan, the editor, and one of the founders of The Wire, along with Mr. M.K. Venu, had come out and vociferously defended their journalism, saying that it is unimpeachable in this case. And that too, especially when experts wrote back saying we have not participated in the verification process. Who fakes the response of experts? Unless, viewers, you're up to something. It appears that this is not about one journalist, but an alleged collusion. Is that a fair question to ask? We'll put that out, viewers, in just a few minutes. But Siddharth Varadarajan spoke to Siddharth Talia. Siddharth, now, you asked him specific questions even in the past, but this conversation is slightly different because this takes place after The Wire put out its article, retracting its article, right?
Absolutely. So The Wire retracted its articles a few days ago, and today it issued a formal apology claiming that an internal review is now being conducted over actually how the articles came to be published. And I asked him some very pointed questions. The first question, of course, was a response to the defamation case that's now been going to be filed.
Let's listen.
Amit Malviya, let's tune into that conversation.
Yeah, let's listen to that conversation. And viewers, we're going to be breaking what Mr. Siddharth Varadarajan says in his latest response to Times Now. The story is being updated live, viewers, for balance, so that all sides are represented on this debate. Listen to Siddharth Varadarajan talking to Siddharth Talia.
Mr. Varadarajan, hi, good evening. My name is Siddharth Talia. I'm calling you from Times Now, sir.
Yeah.
So I just wanted your reaction now that Mr. Amit Malviya has decided to take The Wire to court and file a defamation case. I just wanted your response to that development.
Well, I've just seen his tweet, and so we will handle it when it comes. I mean, in the sense that we're just waiting to see what happens. In the sense that I just saw his tweet. Frankly, I have no reaction as of now.
Okay, and do you believe that, given the fact that you've retracted the concerned pieces about Meta that had been written and also now initiated a review, you've also apologized, how do you think this will pan out now that a defamation suit has been filed? What are you contemplating, sir?
As I said, I've just seen the news, so I'm not contemplating anything.
Okay.
I need time to look at this and discuss with my colleagues.
And a final question to you about the statement.
You can check with me later.
Absolutely. One final question, sir, about the statement that you claim that you were deceived by the person investigating this entire matter on your behalf, on The Wire's behalf, as far as the Meta reportage is concerned. Are you convinced that you were deceived? Because there are enough people who are also saying that this could be a wholesale kind of a fabrication on a large scale, that it might not just be a bona fide error. What's your response to that specific claim?
No, that's crazy. This allegation is it's laughable. So,
okay.
So what we've said in our statement is what the facts are.
Okay.
And that is that is the long and short of the matter.
Now, Siddharth, this is interesting because it appears that Mr. Varadarajan, in his earlier statement, implied that he had been deceived by a reporter, isn't it?
Yeah, so he basically said that in the apology that's now been put out Wire on its website that one of its investigators, the person working on the story with respect to Meta, was actually somebody who ended up deceiving the rest of the Wire staff, who also did not do their due diligence in the story. But this is a complete contrast to a stand of defiance that was taken by Mr. Varadarajan on the 14th of October, when he got in touch with him, and he solidly backed his reporters and the stories that had been put out by the Wire at that point in time.
Well, of course, you also spoke to Mr. Varadarajan on October 14th, and that time he solidly backed the story. Now, viewers, there is one unwritten principle in life, that as a captain of a team, you've got to take it on the chin. You've got to accept responsibility. You can't suddenly say, oh, one particular person misled us, now we are going to take action against that person. You can do all of that, yes, but you can't distance yourself from what you put out. You might remember the time when I was trolled for the McAdams incident. I didn't know about telling the world, viewers, that someone had keyed in the wrong name. I faced up to it. I called Mr. McAdams back. We had a civilized conversation. We had a little joke about it. And quite frankly, viewers, that's the way. That's the way. You got to own up. And this is a test of character, let me tell you. It's a test of character. And one hopes, of course, that Mr. Varadarajan comes out and issues a statement, because his portal is very quick to stand in judgment of other people's output, other news organizations' journalism. So it would be in his interest to put out a statement going into the reasons why he feels that this was not an act of collective failure. Let me open this up, because Siddharth, just very quickly, you had spoken to Siddharth Varadarajan earlier, your namesake, and he had at that time sort of had a very different attitude, right?
Right. Let me in fact take you through, Rahul, through some of the correspondences that we've had with the Wire on the 14th of October, to be specific, a day that we also wrote to Meta seeking their clarification, and they basically reissued the statement they'd given. But with respect to the Wire, we specifically asked them if Wire was actually in a position to corroborate the documentation and emails in its reportage that Meta claims are fabricated or fake. If so, what is the corroborative material? So this is following the allegations made by Meta that the claims made by the Wire are fabricated. Siddharth Varadarajan stood solidly behind the story, saying, yes, we are publishing this later today, which means they published a subsequent piece that was in fact put out on the website on the 15th of October. Then we also said, does Wire have documentary proof to prove that the 705 posts that were reported by Amit Malviya to be taken down on Instagram as well as Facebook, could they actually corroborate that material? To which Mr. Varadarajan said, we've shown the document in one such case, and today we'll provide the evidence that Meta's claim that the URL shown in the document is not in use as false. This document also, Rahul, turns out to be false, exposed by Meta much later. Okay,
well, this is very, very interesting, because Siddharth, this would suggest that someone other than just this reporter was going over the volume of so-called documentary evidence and attesting that it was bona fide, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, and what's really startling in this particular case, Rahul, is the fact that certain trails were left behind that were actually created after Meta had issued its initial rebuttal to the story published by The Wire. So the first couple of stories came between the 10th and the 12th of October. On the 13th, Meta issues a clarification saying all these claims are fabricated, that are being made by The Wire, and thereafter you have 3 or 4 pieces of so-called evidence published in The Wire that claim to authenticate their stories, Rahul, and these also turn out to be a fabrication, as exposed much later, that The Wire continued to defend until just recently.
Well, there has also been another retraction, hasn't it, on another story. What is that? Tech fog or something like that? I didn't quite understand that.
So Rahul, The Wire had come out with a series of stories earlier where they claimed that a certain app that was allegedly run by representatives of the BJP called Tech Fog was actually being used to malign female journalists who were critical of the government. Now, the Freedom House also actually published this as part of their findings on India, where India was in fact significantly downgraded to suggest that freedom of expression is not a fundamental right that is actually being enjoyed by lot of people. There's actually active suppression on the part of the dispensation that's ruling India currently and the current establishment.
Okay.
Now, this TechFox story is also under scrutiny, Rahul, for its reportage and the kind of authentication that the wire claims it's managed to establish. That also is suspect, and it remains to be seen what kind of action is now initiated against TechFox stories run on the wire as well.
Well, that's rather disturbing also, because viewers, remember, all of this narrative goes in to feed a whole ecosystem. I began by saying this. Thanks indeed, Siddharth, for this. But let me tell you, viewers, it feeds an entire ecosystem. That ecosystem then projects a picture of India. That picture is then very quickly lapped up by certain international freedom and democracy watchdogs to pass judgment on India. And when is all of this coming? It's coming at a time when India has emerged relatively quicker than other leading democracies as well as industrial powerhouses from the pandemic epidemic, and is poised to do very well economically. Now, if all of these reports come out about how India has become a sort of Putin-esque Russia, or one of those Gulf countries where you're murdered, not dead, if you speak your mind, or, viewers, a Central Asian Republic which is run by a group of individuals who are throttling people because they happen to express a contrary opinion, a large number of investors will say, we don't want to go to a country where if we have a grouse or we have a problem against the government, we will just be completely quashed. So this affects the country's image. It affects investments coming into the country. And viewers, let me tell you, a short while back, I spoke to Rajiv Malhotra, who's the author of a very well-received book called Snakes in the Ganga. He also joins us. Sanjay Jha is here. And what was the thesis that Rajiv Malhotra, I mean, it's amazing, Mr. Malhotra. Let's get him back. I can't see him. Nizam Bhai, yeah, that's right. There's Rajiv Malhotra on your screens, viewers. He's speaking to us from America today. Good morning, Mr. Malhotra. Your thesis today, it's uncanny. Your thesis is being vindicated by some of the individuals that you have actually cited as part of the problem.
Yes. So thank you for having me, Rahul, and thank you for the clarity. You brought out one more case study, one more example of the sort of thing that this book talks about, my book talks about. In particular, in chapter 14, I talk about the nexus overseas in places like Harvard, where they have the Nieman Center, which is a media center. They bring in people like The Wire. They bring in journalists that are ultra-left and anti-India, anti-BJP, and they nurture these people in various ways. They put together the young journalists who are tutored to in a certain ideology, along with the portals like Wire, where the articles can be published, in effect, building careers of people who are anti-India. There is a huge amount in chapter 14. We've written on that. And we've named Wire and various other portals like that. Then in chapter 20, we talk about in the setups in India. For instance, there is something called the Independent and Public Spirited Media Foundation. The Independent and Public Spirited Media Foundation is funded by the who's who of Indian billionaires and so on. I won't name them, but they are named in the book. And this is an echo of the Nieman Center. So what the Nieman Center is doing from Harvard, certain groups in India are kind of the local India version of it, and they're echoing it, And the net result of all this is a very systematic, serious, you can say conspiracy theory. People don't like that term, but actually it is. This requires funding. This requires a lot of Indians who are working for it as intellectuals, as theorists. And it requires Westerners who are into this ideology. And as you said, we call it Breaking India 2.0, because the idea is to break the India narrative, the India story, the India success story. They want to break it up for all kinds of reasons. So I'm more than happy. I'm extremely happy that you are doing this. And I would like to see a proper investigation in India of the sort of people that we've named in this book.
Well, let me tell you, viewers,
Yes.
Mr. Amit Malviya has decided to sue, file criminal defamation as well as a civil defamation suit against the wire. That's the latest we are hearing also. We're awaiting, of course, as they say, on-camera reaction from Mr. Malviya. But the editor of ANI is here, and Congress spokesperson Sanjay Jha is also here. Now, look, viewers, it's okay. There's no crime committed if a journalist stands up and says, I'm anti-BJP. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a crime in this country to be anti any political party. The point is, viewers, when you extend that and you start talking about the country and you build a narrative that Mr. Malhotra has exposed in his 800-page book. Now, this is not a fly-by-night operation, viewers. Mr. Malhotra has unimpeachable credentials. He's been St. Stephanian, he has been in some of the top colleges in America, but he was cancelled. And we had a long interaction. But, you know, I want to bring in Sanjay Jha. I also want to bring in Smita Prakash. Now, Sanjay Jha, it's very interesting because the Congress party routinely uses words radio, Rwanda and North Korean media against those that might be critical of it. The wire or the stories that deliberately undermine and malign India, are these stories now kosher for the party, or will the party also now stand up and say that perhaps the wire is also deserving of this epithet, Radio Rwanda and North Korean media, for, and remember, it's Mr. Varadarajan who has apologized and retracted the story. It's not a Times Now, you know, sort of expose on their journalism. He, in fact, has come out and said this was, you know, a comprehensive editorial review of the internal editorial processes which resulted in the publication of these stories in order to identify and plug any and all shortcomings. So, you know, he's gone on and sort of said that, yes, well, you know, this was fake news. And it's a monumental, and this is not the first one. Tech Fog, that's also been sort of retracted. A court asked the wire to remove 14 stories on Covaxin and Bharat Biotech after defamation suit. Pegasus reportage also resulted in the SC passing an inconclusive order. So, you know, as the BJP has been saying, as the government's representative, advisor, etc., Mr. Gupta, who advises the INB ministry, came on and said there's a series here. And the BJP is represented by Nalin Kohli. So I'm just asking you, Sanjay Jha, will you today widen the ambit of your great vocabulary to call this a farrago of whatever, or, you know, Rwanda radio and North Korean media? Would this fit in with that, or it's okay to cook up stories and malign the country, etc., in the Congress's book?
Sure. Rahul, if you don't interrupt me, I'll answer in bullet points and take half the time that Mr. Malhotra took. Since Mr. Malhotra, as a true nationalist, is very deeply disturbed at the conspiracy against India, may I request Mr. Malhotra to please read what the Supreme Court of India has told Mr. Modi's government on the practicing of hate speech in this country. It said that it is tragic, and it has gone on to say that it is a violation of the human rights of the citizens of our country. It has gone on to say that, is this the 20th century India that we all dream of? Please, sir, look at the India brand and look at what the Supreme Court has said. It's not the Congress party, it's the Supreme Court. If you have any respect for the United Nations, kindly also read what the United Nations Secretary General had to say about the violation of fundamental rights in India. Now let me quickly answer your question. I don't hold any counsel for the wire, but can it be denied by the BJP? And I would request all the wonderful watchers of your very popular program to just Google fake news and BJP, and the Google will give you a whole laundry list, a grocery list of the kind of blatant lies, fake news, alternative facts, post-truth that the BJP has unleashed on India since 2014. I mean, we all know it. Even the Prime Minister has indulged in fake news. Even that is a document. Point number 3. Can the BJP deny that it doesn't have a romantic, passionate affair with Facebook or Meta? Can we forget Rahul Ankhi Das, the public policy head, who was exposed, by the way, by a conservative, right-leaning Wall Street Journal? and she actually resigned thereafter, which further corroborated the allegations made about the very close equation between the BJP, which was allowed to spread fake news and hate speeches by Meta. Point number 4, very critical here, that end of day, we are living in times where there is a brazen manipulation of all kinds of media vehicles. I believe that The Wire has done the right thing by apologizing the way they have. I think that's the kind of journalistic standards one must uphold. I also appreciate you saying that Times Now has made errors. Why not? I'm aware, for example, that recently you took down that item where I think, the Congress had accused the Times Now of putting out an item about a Jammu and Kashmir Congress member who wasn't a member of the party. And that's what good journalism is about. Everyone makes mistakes.
There is a difference.
It cannot be denied
Mr.
that the
Jha,
BJP is hand in glove with social media agencies.
There is a small difference. You haven't answered my question because the BJP viewers, no one is holding a brief for the BJP. The spokesperson is here. He can answer. Are we saying that other political parties don't tweet fake news? There have been certain cases against Mr. Rahul Gandhi, have we forgotten, where he's being dragged by his neck to make an apology by the Supreme Court on the Rafale affair. So, viewers, let's not go down that rabbit hole. I asked a very simple question. The Congress is very good at labeling people it thinks are ideological adversaries by calling them horrible names. Doesn't befit a Congress party, but of course I don't expect that magnanimity from the Congress that actually silenced the entire media. I mean, disbanded the Constitution in 75, locked up 6,000 people at one go a few years ago under sedition. But 1 minute, I just want to say, Radio Ravanda viewers, Radio Ravanda, Korean, North Korean media are words that are used by mainstream senior leaders of the Congress party to quote unquote shame those that criticize its decisions or its leadership. I only asked, will the Congress party now use the words Ravanda Radio and North Korean media against The Wire, stories that are deliberately alleged to have, admitted to have undermined, maligned India? Are they kosher for the party? Simple. It's a very simple question. Didn't get an answer. What I got was a large number of equivalences. I don't grudge you that, Mr. Jha.
Rahul, why should the Congress party defend
let me just say very quickly.
Secondly, it's an independent online portal.
Please, sir. You have gone to some great extents to... No, 1 second. You have gone to some great extents to... No, 1 second. Sir, I will just pull out certain commentary from your handles, the Congress handles, from your official spokesperson defending certain journalists. You now know that this is indefensible because The Wire has come out and apologized. So you're not going to defend them. You're being opportunistic. That's okay. But I just want to make one small interjection here, viewers. An equivalence was sought to be drawn between Times Now and Wire. Now, viewers, as I said, inadvertent mistakes happen. The example that Sanjay Jha talked about was a clerical error that literally took place on our desk. I investigated it. I put out a statement apologizing for it. I didn't say so and so. One second, Mr. Jha, now let me finish. Why are you speaking over me, sir? Did I speak over you? I didn't speak over you. Sir, I didn't speak over you. I'll tell you.
What's a big deal?
The difference here, according to the BJP, according to Meta, is that Wire... Allow me, sir. Allow me. Okay, let me quote Siddharth Varadarajan. I don't know why you're shouting.
It has been proven in the
let me quote Siddharth Varadarajan. You're right. Why should I quote the BJP when I have the primary source here? So this is what Siddharth Varadarajan said. Wire acknowledges that the internal editorial processes which preceded publication of its meta stories did not meet the standards that we set for ourselves and our readers expect from us. To our readers, an apology and a promise. I'll get to the promise bit another time. No one has seen the future. But this is an apology. Now, viewers, there was no pressure of deadlines. In instant newsrooms where information is coming, you can drop an ex-Congress member and write Congress member. It can just happen. It's a clerical input error. It can happen.
No,
it did happen. Let me finish.
For the
Sanjay Jha, please.
Rahul, I'm
oh
sorry.
God, why is he shouting? Why do you shout so much, sir?
It painted
Why
Congress.
are you speaking?
No, 1 minute.
Why are you speaking over me?
As being an
Why are you speaking? Why are you speaking? Why are you speaking over me?
It was a political narrative being set up.
Sir, am I hiding behind? Am I hiding behind? Am I hiding behind? Am I hiding behind?
Why are you being self-righteous?
Oh gosh.
Why are you
there
being
you go.
sanctimonious
I'm
with this
just
issue?
merely drawing a distinction,
Accept
sir.
it.
I am. Sir, we put out an apology. You've quoted the apology. This is not about times now.
So you apologized, right? You didn't say clerical error.
Sir,
you apologized because it made the party look
I am
bad.
trying to draw a
And it was
distinction
intentional.
between the example. Excuse me, please let me speak. Please, sir, I have not interrupted you at all. At least let me put out my side. Since you drew attention to it. All I'm saying is, viewers, it's an error, inadvertent error, vis-a-vis what appears to be a well thought out exercise in gaming the profession by cooking up material. There are two very different things. Anyhow, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, as I said. Let the BJP quickly respond, and I want to bring in senior journalist, editor of the ANI, Smita Prakash, right after that. Mr. Nalin Kohli, we've heard Mr. Sanjay Jha talking about how you have shamed this country, how the Supreme Court has pulled you up for it, etc., etc. Would you like to respond to him?
And include the UN Secretary General.
Thank you, Rahul. So I have multiple points to say. The first is, for the record, Mr. Jha did speak much longer than Mr. Malhotra. Number two, on the Supreme Court, hate speech, it's always convenient for the Congress party to quote one thing but forget the other. On Rafale, there's been a castigation. They are still flogging a dead horse. So they have no respect for the Supreme Court when it suits them, and then they exalt the Supreme Court. So they've even dragged it for politics to the lowest levels possible. But that's okay. That's their institutional history, and that's their desire of how they treat institutions. Three, let's come to the substantive story. We'll leave the duplicity of the Congress, which can be nauseating at times. But let's come to the substantive issue here, which is what with the wire story. I think there's a deeper story here, and one of concern. The first is, a set of people will become the self-proclaimed saviors of democracy, freedom of speech, and civil liberties. Then they will perhaps look for funding from some foreign source. Then they will say, we are journalists, and we are the last free journalists, independent journalists, and therefore what we speak is the gospel truth, somehow trying to survive in a hostile environment. And then they have assumed onto themselves the freedom to do what they like, say what they like, and then say it's an inadvertent error. I mean, this is fake news. They will face the legal consequences, as my colleague in the party, Mr. Amit Malviya, said it. And I'm sure he'll follow it up, both civil and criminal action, that he has those provisions under law. But the larger question here is, how do you call this then journalism? I mean, this is not journalism, this is an agenda. And why not? In a democracy, people are entitled to have an agenda. We have our agenda as a political party, the Congress has its, the left front has this, the wire can also have its agenda. But please don't become sanctimonious and suddenly give yourself your self-proclaimed pat on the back that we are the only ones protecting democracy. This is not democracy. This is fake news at its best. This is proof of the pudding in terms of your report showing that they had to apologize. As far as the Congress party talks about the BJP's imaginary control over the entire global order, including meter, perhaps they would do well to recall Mr. Rahul Gandhi's meeting with Cambridge Analytica. It was certainly not to take lessons on what Janayu should be worn before visiting the next temple. So I think the Congress party is today trying to join the brotherhood of the fringe. Because when they are not part of the mainstream, you then start defending the fringe who do damage to the heart of this country. Okay. And the wire cannot be excluded from that.
Okay, let me bring in Smita Prakash. Smita Prakash, hasn't the apology strengthened the thesis that there are snakes in the Ganga? As Mr. Rajiv Malhotra very eloquently wrote, and this title of his book, that there is an ecosystem that is using disinformation to break India and spread mass disaffection.
Look, Rahul, I just want to say this, that, your reporter Siddharth, he pointed out in his thing, he said there was frauding of video. There was a forging of emails. There were fake screenshots. And then he said that created trails. Now, if you're doing all this, you are into activism, you are into agenda journalism. This is not journalism as such. You were talking about mistakes that are made in newsrooms. We all work in newsrooms, right? You do, I do. What happens? We have firewalls in place. And in live journalism, as you rightly pointed out, that these firewalls can get breached very easily because of the immediacy factor. So like, when there are these firewalls in place and you realize that something has breached the firewall, then what do you do as an editor? As an editor, you or I, what do? We immediately haul up the reporter and say, ye galat hai, this is wrong. What happened? Did you do this deliberately? Was there a mistake? And when it comes to tech-related issues, as the Wire says, that not fully grasping the complexities of technology and a slippage in editorial assessment of tech-related matters. This is just a hijab that you're wearing, or this is a mask that you're wearing, that because it is tech-related, you made this error. No. If that could happen once, so it happens with us. It could be a medical issue, COVID-related story. Sometimes an error happens. You call up the reporter and say, ki galat hai kya? What is wrong? Is there an agenda? Did you do this deliberately? And you immediately withdraw the story. In an agency wherever I work, we tell all our subscribers then that, look, we made an error. Please take it down from your television channel, from your website, from your newspaper, wherever it is. And what does a newspaper do? They bring out a report next day as an errata. But then what did these guys do? They kept on repeating, kept on forging or whatever that they have done. They created a trail. Now it's up to the courts to establish it, and Nalin has more faith probably in our civil courts because he practices there. I have very little faith in this ever coming out in the open as to what happened. But look at what is happening already. Already an ecosystem is defending the Wire. You saw Mr. Jha, what he said just now. And there are also reports that I'm reading, tweets and, comments that this was probably a PSYOP operation on the Wire to make them look bad in order to affect their funding. And, here you're talking, Mr. Nalin Kohli is talking about foreign funding. No, as Mr. Malhotra pointed out, it's not just foreign funding. Mind you, resources are drying up abroad. This is also funding which is happening from Indians, whether they are, a conduit or whatever. But the fact is that funding is happening to activism, not journalism. All those who are watching and funding these kind of sources, these kind of websites, please be aware that you're funding activism. These are the very sites which asked for proof over Balakot strikes. They said, give us video proof about Balakot strikes. And here are people who are supposedly manufacturing, who are making trails. And they took weeks to take down this erroneous report. Even if you had a sense that, there might be a chance. And please, Mr. Jha, you being, tongue in the cheek talking about the wonderful viewers of Times Now, watch out. You are on Times and making fun of viewers of Times Now.
Smita Prakash, which ecosystem are you a part of? Can you tell the public watching this
I am part of no ecosystem because all the subscribers of ANI or of a news agency are people who are across the board, including the viewers of Times Now. You
face
are the
the
one
facts and face the music.
Sanjay Jha,
I'm sorry, you stand exposed.
Sanjay Jha, now look at this. Viewers, now look, hang on. Would Sanjay Jha, one second. Would Sanjay Jha...
I'm sorry, Rahul, this is not
would Sanjay Jha... No, one second.
I mean,
would
Smita
Sanjay
has a right
one
to
second,
put her
one
point
second.
down.
Nalin
You
Kohli...
can't paint it as if it's an agenda.
Nalin Kohli, 1 second. Would Sanjay Jha get up right
we tolerated
now?
also Sanjay's point of view.
He
tolerated mine from his perspective.
He probably has... Let me finish. Nalin Kohli, 1 second. Sanjay Jha probably has a phone with him right now. He can call Siddharth Varadarajan and ask him and use the same tone, tenor, and tell him what he's just said. But he won't, viewers.
He won't. Of course he won't.
The question is why.
Nor will he talk disparaging about the readers of
What are
Wire.
you trying to compare apples and oranges?
There you go. Compare apples and oranges, this, that. Viewers,
everybody calls ANI Amit Narendra International. Everyone calls it Amit Narendra International.
Look at that.
ANI
Now, just everybody means the Congress party and its trolls.
At one point of time, we were called Sonia Media and Mino Media also. You people are the ones who go on giving tags to everybody because you think you are the only journalists in town.
You
are the ones who are going to save democracy in this country. No, you're not. You are nobody to give us
Mr. Jha, you can boycott ANI if you dislike it so much.
You boycott all the channels.
Well, why do you have to force yourself to be on something that you consider
Congress
so
Party-
worthy
Hey,
of
Nalin,
hate?
why are
That's
you
a
defending
persecution.
ANI?
You don't follow it.
Nalin, why are you
You're
become the
here.
lawyer for ANI?
You
just exposed yourself.
Let's not.
Nalin Kohli, you just exposed
I don't want to
yourself.
sidetrack this. 1 second. I don't want to sidetrack this.
Mr. Kohli just exposed himself.
Just 1 second. Mr. Jha is an expert,
You are
not
by your own
discussing the
party.
issue because
worry
today
about
he's
me.
embarrassed. He has nothing to say, so he's going to try and take pot shots at people,
No, how
including
dare
me.
he? How dare he make
I'm
fun
just
of
calling
viewers
the
of your own
truth out,
channel?
Rahul.
Well, you know,
It is time to
I
call
think
out
if I
the
were to
truth.
just open the phone in,
Enough of
if I were just to
hypocrisy
call
and
in, no,
fake
1
ads.
second, if I were to ask viewers to call in, the last time Sanjay Jha was on this show, I know what the viewers said to him. So I don't want to go down there. Let's forget it. I just want to bring in Swarajya magazine, senior editor, Tushar Gupta. I want to bring in Ishkaran Bhandari first, and I want to go back to Rajiv Malhotra and Mr. Chaudhary. Now, 1 second. 1 second. Let me first go straight across to Ishkaran Bhandari. Mr. Bhandari, I want to ask you a question. Should the Editors Guild that called for a Supreme Court inquiry on the back of the Wire's tech fog story now ask for an explanation from the Wire or take action, issue some sort of a show cause? Where is the Editors Guild gone? That's a question that I'm also going to ask you, Smita Prakash, in about 30 seconds. But let Ishkaran Bhandari respond first. Where is the Editors Guild?
Rahul, they are hiding behind some leftist hijab. They have no intention of taking action. But let us deal with the issues one by one. It is not a very difficult issue to understand. There were multiple layers of fakery. It reminds me of Sir Walter Scott. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when we first practice to deceive. And what were they practicing to deceive? A lie, a complete fake news backed by fake evidence. Then they brazened it out. They doubled down and they said that they are fake emails or fake verification and fake certificates. When that was caught, only then, and it was caught, why? Because international tech experts got into the business. When you talk about the tape fog, it was an attack on BJP and international tech experts were not involved, so they were very comfortable to let it go through. Here they took on Meta, here they took on Microsoft, some leader, here they took on people who were not Indians. They could not blame CBI pressure, ED pressure by BJP, so they had no option but to withdraw the news. If it was a tape fog story that lasted, because anybody who fact checked it, they said CBI ka hai, ED ka hai ya BJP ka hai. Now Microsoft, they can't say that. And one more point, which is the bigger point here. What do they do once they withdraw? They immediately issue an appeal for more funds. So now the question is, the people funding them, and as Amita Prakash said, from India, will they stop funding them after knowing their track record? Will they be defunded or will they get more funds? Unfortunate reality is, you take my word for it, they will get more funds unless they face the consequences of law.
Okay, Smita Prakash, where's the Editors Guild? Why haven't they taken an activist position against activist journalism?
Yeah, so I'm part of the Editors Guild, Rahul, and that whole organization is populated by people who are barely editors anymore. There are very few actual working editors, because once you get into the Editors Guild, you can't leave the Editors Guild. You stay there, and unless they throw you out. So there are many editors who are no longer editors, and they are the ones who run that organization. So, you know, elections are held and supposedly and go on. The same people get elected again and again by consensus. Everything happens by consensus because there is an ecosystem of these people who keep talking. So they all, you scratch my back, I scratch my back. This whole ideological adversaries bit. So, you know, which your reporter pointed out. What is ideological adversaries? If you're a journalist, I'm sorry, bring out your report. Everybody is reporting it. We are all reporting from morning to evening. We are reporting the Bharat Jodo Yatra, aren't we? We start off in the morning at 6:30. Your channel shows it. How dare anybody question or put motives behind any news organization like this? Because we are all subjected to some kind of response from our viewers who say that why are you showing only one party? So we have to show everybody. Whereas these are the people who only, like he just pointed out, the person before me pointed out about Tech Frog. When they brought out the names, my name was also involved in that, was in that report. I got so many calls from people from a certain ecosystem. Why aren't you tweeting this? Why aren't you putting it? Your name is also on that list. I said, I don't know about this report. I don't know about whether this genesis of this report is right or wrong. So I didn't tweet it. I didn't talk about it. I didn't say, oh my God, I'm being attacked by trolls. No, these are, I do not subscribe to value to a journalism which is activist oriented. This is not journalism. I'm sorry. Siddharth is a friend. I know Siddharth for a long time. We have reported for a long time together. But that doesn't mean that I subscribe to the journalism of the wire. Very rightfully pointed out that just because somebody takes them to court, they pull down the stories. But the stories which are done by some of these websites, agenda-driven websites, when they do these stories, unless somebody takes them to court, nothing happens. The stories keep sitting on their line. Whether it is the caravan, whether all these people who are there writing these stories, and do you have the time? Do I have the time to take them to court? It costs a lot of money and energy. None of us have the time. We have to earn a living. So we don't do it. I don't know whether Mr. Malviya, whether he will take this to its logical course, and whether because now there are multiple sources, multiple giants, tech giants involved, maybe something happens. Otherwise, I'm sorry, I don't have much faith in it.
Okay, well, I'll be bringing in Rajiv Malhotra in just a few moments. I'm going to let him have the last word on this show because I have a question and I want an expansive answer from him. But before that, just the two other panelists. Ishkaran, I'm just coming to give me 30 seconds. Swarajya Magazine senior editor Tushar Gupta and also Kamruzaman Chaudhary, leader of the Congress. How do you see this, Tushar Gupta? You also run a magazine. How do you see this? Would this happen at the Swarajya?
Rahul, let's put the politics aside for a second.
Yeah.
What was the story from the wire implying? That Amit Malviya has enough power to take down any social media post he wants to. In January, when the TechFox story was run, they claimed that the BJP had enough firepower to influence trends on Twitter, to use inactive WhatsApp accounts to spam other contacts. Now, this is not some supercomputer they were decoding. This was not millions of lines of codes they were decoding. This was not some encryption key they were unlocking. It was about social media. It was about some email accounts. So last night at midnight, when the wire issued an apology and they said, we missed some technical details, they were beyond our understanding. I to understand which technical details. A week ago, they were experts in how social media works and how BJP controls the social media. A week ago, they understood how the emails work. And a week later, they do not understand how the emails work, how social media works, how WhatsApp accounts work. I mean, at one point, you can even assume that it was an honest mistake, but it was not. It was a clear, fabricated piece of information they circulated in the hope of not getting caught. Had Meta executives not called out the reportage, they would have kept defending
well, it's a very serious charge made against Meta and the BJP, etc., because it would assume that there was collusion, as Sanjay Jha says, a cozy arrangement, as he also reiterated right now. Of course, viewers, it's easy to pass these comments because no one is going to ask you really to defend or furnish proof. You can speak in insinuations. But Mr. Chaudhary, I'm coming out to you. You're a Congress leader, senior one. I asked Mr. Jha this question. He didn't answer it exactly. So let me try my luck with you. Will the Congress party now use the words Radio Rwanda and North Korean media against the wire? Or are stories that deliberately undermine and malign India kosher for the Congress party? Simple question. Don't take too much time, because if you're going to spin me around, remember you're eating into the time of Rajiv Malhotra, which we don't want. So tell me. Simple, straightforward question.
No, if that's the case, I don't have to forfeit my show out here. You can continue. Because after 45 minutes, if you have run a one-sided agenda-driven debate, then I'm very out of the show. It doesn't matter, Rahul. But since you have invited me, just give me a few seconds. One thing that is there, the entire crux of the debate, a misplaced story, which the wire has already apologized, is immediately linked to anti-India story, anti-national story, anti-BJP story, to create a hype amongst the entire story. It's that the wire has clearly put out that the victim of deception by a member of Meta investigation team. Now, wire has been magnanimous in its apology, but they were not prodded by the NBSA in the Rahul Preet Singh case or the Jaslin Kaur case story. or in the Rahul Gandhi case, or in the Sanjukta Basu case, all were linked to one of your particular channels. Now, my question here to the BJP panelists and all those who are supporting the story against the wire, does Amit Malviya have the X-check privileges still from the Meta? Can BJP deny that?
News.
Can Meta deny this?
Oh my
Why
God.
is this particular
Mr.
story
Chaudhary, that news has been denied.
No, they
in fact, the apology has
accepted.
been
They have
issued.
got
Okay, 1 minute.
5.4.
Chaudhary Saab,
No,
please.
no, no.
Let us not defend
They've
a story
got
that has been withdrawn.
5.4 million
Let us not defend a story that has been withdrawn. Mr.
No,
Rajiv Malhotra, let me come out to you. Okay. Okay, Chaudhary
My
Saab.
question is a different one.
Right. Okay.
It's a different story. 5.4
Right. Chaudhary Saab, please don't bring in different stories. I haven't analyzed all these different stories. Please listen. It's not as if wire is only being pulled up for this one story. Tech fog used by Freedom House to downgrade India's democracy. That story today stands retracted for whatever reasons I don't know. But the damage is done. India's rating is not going to bounce back up. Mr. Malhotra, the story might have been retracted, but the ecosystem that propagated it and influenced the good folks at Freedom House. Freedom House has not come back and said, oh, we use this to downgrade India, now let's put back India on its pedestal. It's not. That damage is done, isn't it?
Yeah. So I have seen this over the last 30 years, that when there is a malignment of India, in the international affairs, this was the case when Ayodhya, this was the case when some nuns got killed, all sorts of things. It's one-sided, and then when the courts rule the other way, they don't retract. So I'm surprised that this story, which is so big in India, has not been picked up by anybody in the Western press in the US, who are keen to jump on India and jump on its democracy and its government and the Hindu people running it and all that stuff whenever they get the slightest excuse. But when things work the other way around, there is silence, and so this is very strange. It's a one way when they can hound India, they will. Yeah. But when they need to retract and apologize, they don't. So
well, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. I can't put a finger on it, viewers, but there's something wrong. Leave it at this. The news are coming up in just a few moments.